Hey, what is up, everybody? This is Cam Fats coming at you on behalf of the Cam Fats YouTube channel. Guys, today I want to talk to you a little bit about flat Earth. And, clearly by the title of this video, I don't really believe the Earth is flat. And this video is not really going to be addressed at people who do believe the Earth is flat. The fact of the matter is, belief is powerful. I think belief is more powerful than proof. It's more powerful than evidence. Once someone believes something, all the analytical evidence you can shove at them becomes meaningless because they just believe it with a blind faith. I wanted to make this video and point it at the youth. I want the people who are young and influenceable to see this video, and I want you to really think about what I'm saying. I want you to really think about it before you start buying into all this flat Earth stuff. I know there's a lot of videos and propaganda out there about flat Earth, and it sounds okay. It sounds pretty good. Like there's a lot of theories out there that sound pretty good until you really start digging in, and then you figure out, wow, that was a lie. that was a bunch of crap. But I was inspired to make this video because I saw so many people who believed flat Earth. They even have their little nicknames for people who believe the Earth is round, which is amazing. It's absolutely amazing. Anyways, it doesn't matter. If you like this video, I'm getting ready to move over to a screen share. I'm getting ready to share a timeline with you. I want to show you some history. Okay. And if you like this video that I'm getting ready to show you, first of all, give me a thumbs up and drop me a comment, man. I want to hear from you. Let me know you're live out there. But second of all, and more importantly, if you like this video, let me know, and I will make more videos about this subject. Because primarily what I'm focusing on is the Mandela effect right now on this channel. And the reason I'm focusing on it is because I believe it's real, right? I cannot analytically disprove some of these Mandela effects. Like, they don't make any sense. Not so with the flat Earth. You have to understand that with flat Earth, there's like 2,500 years of history. And some of the greatest minds of our time, not even our time, of all time, some of the greatest minds of all time, Aristotle, included, some of the greatest minds of all time worked on trying to figure out what shape the Earth was. And we're going to get into some of that history in this timeline. But the point is, if you're going to be a flat earther, you need to disprove 2,500 years of science from the greatest minds of all time, not just our time, all time. We're talking about scientific facts, scientific and mathematical equations that they used to discover, what the circumference of the Earth was and why it was round and what shape was it. We're talking about people that existed before Jesus walked the earth. Okay, these people existed before we mark the time of Christ on the map. So there's really a lot you have to disprove if you want to believe the Earth is flat. Okay, keep that in mind. That's not like the Mandela effect. The Mandela effect is a whole nother animal. It's very, very weird, very strange, and I cannot disprove many of those Mandela effects. They just don't make sense. And when you look a little bit deeper, you'll see that they're not adding up. Anyways, we're not talking about Mandela effect today. I want to talk about flat Earth. I want to explain to you how preposterous the idea of believing the Earth is flat really is, because it's absolutely ridiculous. I'm going to get into history with you. All right, let's go. Okay, so the first thing I just want to show you is Google Trends. Now, this right here is the United States from 2004 to present. Is the Earth flat? Is the Earth round? As you can see, around 2015, around the beginning of 2016, is the Earth flat started spiking up like crazy, right? Now, what I found is a lot of these conspiracy theories, and I'll include the Mandela effect in that, even though I don't think the Mandela effect is the same as some of these other conspiracy theories. But I will include the Mandela effect in that because it's the truth. A lot of these conspiracy series started spiking up around this time for whatever reason. And it probably had, something to do with the United States presidential election, because that happened in 2016 as well. Kind of a weird coincidence. But anyways, just keep this in mind. There might be more at play here than just like, hey, there's a bunch of morons who believe the earth is flat. There might be something pushing them to believe that. Something not supernatural at all, but just something that is trying to be manipulative. That's what the data would indicate to me. Anyways, I want to show you guys something, though. So this is a little timeline that I put together. And what this does is it's a history of events. And guys, this is what I need you to understand about this timeline. This is not everything, okay? I need you to understand this. I'm going to go through this timeline with you, and I'm going to talk about some of these events, but I need you to understand this is not even close to everything. Some of the greatest minds in history have worked on this problem of what shape is the earth, and, do other things rotate around the earth, or do we rotate around something else? Is the earth moving? You got to understand, some of the greatest minds in history have worked on this problem, and they've been working on it before the time of Christ, throughout history, all the way up to present day. So to say the earth is flat is to disregard 2,500 years of history and education by the greatest minds of our time, of all time, not just our time. Let's go back to Pythagoras, okay? Pythagoras' proposal, this was 2,500 years ago, okay? This was in 500 BC, before Jesus walked the earth, okay? Pythagoras first proposed a spherical earth. He based it, now history says that he based it mainly on aesthetic grounds rather than on any physical evidence. Like many Greeks, he believed the sphere was the most perfect shape. It's important to note here, though, that Pythagoras is credited with one of the most important mathematical equations in history, the Pythagoras theorem. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. This is a theorem that has a lot of applications. We use it to this day all the time. Okay, so the man was very, very smart. So even though it says up here that he proposed a spherical earth based on aesthetic grounds, you have to understand this was not a normal man. Okay, Pythagoras was a man of great intelligence. He founded the Pythagorean School of Mathematics in Cortona, a Greek seaport in southern Italy. He is credited with many contributions to mathematics, although some of them may have actually been the work of his students. By around 500 BC, most ancient Greeks believed that the earth was round, not flat, but they had no idea how big the planet is until about 240 BC, when Eratosthenes devised a clever method of estimating its circumference. More on that in a minute, okay? But the point is, way back here, this mathematical genius was already saying, hey, I think the earth is a sphere, So that was 500 years before Christ walked the earth, okay? That's important to note. Aristotle's conclusion. In 350 BC, all right, 350 BC. This was 2,370 years ago, okay? A long time ago, before Christ. Aristotle lived in ancient Greece more than 300 years before the Common Era, or before Christ. Aristotle decided he could understand the world through observation by using logic and reason. Later, scientists called Aristotle the father of natural science because centuries after the ancient scholar's death, his methods formed the basis of the scientific method. The Greek thinker realized that a lunar eclipse occurred when the earth came between the sun and the moon. The shape of the earth's shadow, Aristotle observed, was round. The shape of the earth's shadow. Do you guys understand? If the earth was flat, its shadow would have been a much different form. You guys understand what they're saying, right? So a lunar eclipse happens when the Earth comes between the sun and the moon. Okay? The Earth comes between the sun and the moon. There's a nice picture of a lunar eclipse for you right there. It's got an arc to it, right? Aristotle observed that and said, "Hey, that's the shadow of the Earth. It must be round. It must be a sphere. It's the only thing. It can't be flat, or it wouldn't produce this kind of shadow on the moon." All right, that's what Aristotle was saying, right? The Earth passes over, and you can look at this on a chart. You can look at this on a chart. I don't know if I can find a chart. There it is. You can see right there. There's a full lunar eclipse in July. Boom. There it is. Boom, boom, boom. There's the Earth starting to pass. You can see the arc of the planet of the Earth right there. Boom, 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 boom. Aristotle observed this 2,300 years ago. All right, a long time ago. Let's keep that in mind. You know, now again, this is going out to the people who don't know what to think. This is not going out to the people who are hardcore flat earthers. They are into a belief structure that all evidence will not cure them of. They have blind faith that we have been lied to. Another thing I want to point out, you guys, is this all happened before there was any government for America. There was no American government back then. This was 2,300 years ago. This is before the time that Christ walked the earth. This was a long time ago. These are the Greeks, right? And what I'm going to show you spans many cultures and many governments. Okay, so there's no conspiracy that affects the entire Earth about what shape the Earth is. That's nonsense, absolute nonsense. You know, the governments of today, they can't even get along. They can't even get along on simple things like global warming, let alone what shape the Earth is. It's absolute nonsense to believe that. Anyways, the Greek thinker realized that a lunar eclipse occurred when the Earth came between the sun and the moon. The shape of the Earth's shadow, like I showed you guys, was round. If the Earth were flat, its shadow would have been a much different form. Next, Aristotle considered the position of the North Star. The farther north you journeyed, the closer the North Star seemed to move to the middle of the sky. But if someone were to travel south of what we now call the equator, the North Star could not be seen at all. Finally, Aristotle watched ships sailing into port. He noticed that at a distance, he could see the tops of their sails before he saw the rest of the ship. Aristotle deduced that this was because of the curvature of the Earth. If we lived on a flat Earth, none of Aristotle's conclusions would be accurate. We know today that Aristotle's conclusions were correct because humans have traveled around the globe, and we have seen pictures of the Earth from space. Now, I want to talk more about that travel around the globe thing in a minute. We're going to get to that, but it's called circumnavigation, when you travel around something. And we're going to get to it. I want to show you when the first time someone traveled around the entire planet was, and I want to show you how many times this has been done, okay? Because this is nothing new. Lots of people have circumnavigated the globe, I should say. Lots of people, okay? It's not something that would be possible if the Earth was flat or if there was some kind of Antarctic ice wall. It's absolute rubbish, man. It's rubbish. Don't believe it. Okay. In his book on the heavens, he wrote, "Again, our observations of the stars make it evident not only that the Earth is circular, but also that it is a circle of no great size. For quite a small change of position to south or north causes a manifest alteration of the horizon." In other words, you see different sets of stars in the night sky depending on where you are. The sky over the northern hemisphere is not the same as the sky over the southern hemisphere. If the Earth was flat, then at any given time, we would all see the same stars, and we don't. All right, so those were three observations that Aristotle made that forced him to the conclusion that the Earth was, in fact, a sphere, not flat. Okay. Now, not long after that, Eratosthenes calculates the Earth's circumference. So not only did he agree with Aristotle that the Earth was a ball. It was round. It was a spheroid. But he took it a step further and he figured out how to calculate the circumference of it, how big of a spheroid it was. Okay, this was in 240 BC. This was 2,261 years ago. Okay, 240 years before Christ walked this earth. Eratosthenes successfully determined the circumference of the earth, and he was extremely close, you guys, extremely close. Even by today's standards, he was very close. He did this by measuring the length of the shadow cast by a rod. He did the measurement in Alexandria and timed it to coincide when the sun is directly overhead Syene, which is another city. Eratosthenes had heard that in Syene, a city south of Alexandria, no vertical shadow were cast at noon on the summer solstice. The sun was directly overhead. He wondered if this was also true in Alexandria. So on June 21st, he planted a stick directly in the ground and waited to see if a shadow would be cast at noon. It turns out there was one, and it measured about 7 degrees. Now, if the sun's rays are coming in at the same angle at the same time of day, and a stick in Alexandria is casting a shadow while a stick in Syene is not, it must mean that the Earth's surface is curved, and Eratosthenes probably already knew that. He already knew it because Aristotle, right? According to Cleomedes, on the circular motions of the celestial bodies, this was a book, right? Around 240 BC, Eratosthenes, the librarian of the Library of Alexandria, calculated the circumference of the earth in Ptolemaic Egypt. Using a scaff, he knew that at local noon on the summer solstice in Syene, this is kind of like a more detailed explanation of what he did. The sun was directly overhead. Syene is at a latitude of 24 degrees by 5 north, near to the Tropic of Cancer, which was 23 degrees 42 north and 100 BC. He knew this because the shadow of someone looking down a deep well at that time in Syene blocked the reflection of the sun on the water. He then measured the sun's angle of elevation at noon in Alexandria by using a vertical rod known as a gnomon and measuring the length of its shadow on the ground. Using the length of the rod and the length of the shadow as the legs of a triangle, he calculated the angle of the sun's rays. This angle was about 7 degrees or 1/50th the circumference of a circle. Taking the earth as perfectly spherical, he concluded that the earth's circumference was 50 times the known distance from Alexandria to Syene, 5,000 stadia, a figure that was checked yearly, i.e. 250,000 stadia. Depending on whether he used the Olympic stade or the Italian stade, this would imply a circumference of 44,100 kilometers, an error of 10%. Or 46,100 kilometers, an error of 15%. So he was pretty close, man. For, 2,261 years ago, he was pretty damn close. So anyways, I thought that was really interesting. There's 3 facts for you right there. Some of the greatest minds of all time who proved that not only was the earth round, they actually proved a circumference on it. So anyways, let's move a little bit further. Guys, I want you to know lots of things happened in here, okay? Lots of things happened in here, guys. I could have filled this timeline up so full with scientists who made significant contributions to this science, okay? But I'm not going to because I don't want the video to be too long, and I don't want to overwhelm you with information. I just want you to get a sense of how much science has went into us seeing the earth as round. I want you to know when this started and how long it's been going on. The idea that the earth is flat and the idea that you would believe that the earth is flat would mean you would need to discredit thousands of years of science, thousands of years of some of the greatest minds of all time doing mathematics to prove that the earth was round, right? This is Ali Biruni. And I thought this was interesting. There's a lot I could say about Ali Biruni. Ali was from Iran, and he was from He was from the Middle East, but he actually, one thing he actually did was that circumference that Eratosthenes calculated. Al-Biruni actually increased the accuracy of it. Right, this was in 996 A.D. This was over 1,000 years ago. And that was interesting that he did that. He improved on the circumference of what Eratosthenes said. He used mathematics to do this, but I didn't want to point out that. What I wanted to point out was this. While it might have been used in ancient Egyptians for star maps in some holy books, the earliest text describing the azimuthal equidistance projection is an 11th century work by Al-Biruni. The projection appears in many Renaissance maps, and Gerardus Mercator used it for an inset of the North Pole regions in sheet 13 and legend 6 of his well-known 1569 map. In France and Russia, this project is named Postel projection, after Guillaume Postel, who used it for a map in 1581. Many modern star chart planispheres use the polar azimuthal equidistance projection. So this is a style of map, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I am an expert on maps, but the point is, this is the polar azimuthal equidistance projection map. It basically puts everything. It has the useful properties that all points on the map are at proportional correct distances from the center, and that all points on the map are at the correct azimuth direction from the center point. It's a useful application for this type of projection is a polar projection, which shows all meridians, lines of longitude, as straight. So this is a useful map because it shows all meridians as straight lines. Right, that's the point of this map, and they use it. Actually, there's several uses for this kind of map. One of the uses is for radio. Right here, applications. In the case of radio, this projection allows for directional antenna aiming. Right, so there's several uses for this map. But you know what I thought was interesting is I see now this map cropping up for flat Earth people. Like this is supposed to be some kind of flat Earth map. It's supposed to prove the Earth is flat. It absolutely doesn't do that. They've been using this map since the time of our guy here, Al-Biruni. They've been using this map, for 1,000 years for different purposes than hey, the Earth is flat. No one's ever used it for that except current day flat earthers. It's absolute nonsense. This is a real map that is being used for, something that it wasn't intended for. So don't look at this map and think, hey, this is what the world really looks like. It doesn't look like this. This is not a giant ice wall around the planet. That's pure fiction. All right, this is an actual map that has an actual purpose, and it's to make all these lines of longitude straight, and to make everything proportional, and it's like that for an actual purpose, right? And I could do a whole video just on this one subject. To be honest with you, do a whole video just on this one subject, but I'm not going to because we need to move on. The point is, this is a real map. It has a real purpose, and it's not to show everybody that the Earth is flat. Okay, that's the point. All right, let's move on from Al. Okay. Copernicus' views of the universe, right? In Copernicus's lifetime, most believed that the Earth held its place at the center of the universe. The sun, the stars, and all the planets revolved around it. Now, it's important to note here, you guys, that when Copernicus was alive, people believed the Earth was round, but they didn't know that the Earth revolved around the sun, right? Most believe that the Earth held its place at the center of the universe. The sun, the stars, and all the planets revolved around it. One of the glaring mathematical problems with this model was that the planet on occasion would travel backward across the sky over several nights of observation. Astronomers called this retrograde motion. To account for it, the current model, based on the Greek astronomer and mathematician Ptolemy's view, incorporated a number of circles within circles, epicircles. inside of a planet's path. Some planets required as many as 7 circles, creating a cumbersome model that many felt was too complicated to have naturally occurred. In 1514, Copernicus distributed a handwritten book to his friends that set out his view of the universe. In it, he proposed that the center of the universe was not Earth, but that the sun lay near it. He also suggested that Earth's rotation accounted for the rise and setting of the sun, the movement of the stars, and that the cycle of the seasons was caused by Earth's revolutions around it. Finally, he correctly proposed that Earth's motion through space caused the retrograde motion of the planets across the night sky. Planets sometimes moved in the same direction as stars, slowly across the sky from night to night, but sometimes they moved in opposite or retrograde direction. Copernicus finished the first manuscript of his book on the revolutions of heavenly spheres in 1532. In it, Copernicus established that the planets orbited the sun rather than the Earth. He laid out his model of the solar system and the path of the planets. I want to point something out. Even though he finished this book in 1532, guys, he didn't publish it until 1543 or something. He didn't publish it until 3 years before he was going to die, right? He published it much, much later. And the reason he didn't publish it is because his theories here, what he believed to be the truth, which ended up being the truth, was directly opposed to the church. It was directly opposed to a giant religious sect, which was the Catholic Church. When he did release it, the Catholic Church didn't ban it at first, but they did end up banning it. They ended up banning his book eventually. And the reason why they say they probably didn't ban it at first is because they didn't understand it. They didn't understand the works. They didn't understand exactly what he was saying. The point is, what Copernicus observed and what he stated was that, hey, the Earth is revolving around the sun, and all these other planets are doing the same thing. That's a simple explanation for why these things are happening. So it's important to note this. We're talking about Copernicus here, okay? The dude was quite smart. All right, so there's Copernicus. Now I want to talk about Ferdinand Magellan, okay? Ferdinand Magellan, this was in 1519, 499 years ago, about 500 years after Copernicus, right? The Portuguese explorer Ferdinand Magellan famously circumnavigated the Earth from 1519 to 1522, which would have been even more difficult if it had had an edge. That was supposed to be a joke, right? The Earth didn't have an edge. The dude circled the globe. This was a Spanish expedition to the East Indies. The circumnavigation was completed by Juan Sebastian Elcano. Circumnavigation definition is the complete navigation around an entire island, continent, or astronomical body, like a planet or moon. The first circumnavigation of the Earth was the Magellan Elcano expedition, which sailed from Seville, Spain in 1519 and returned in 1522. After crossing the Atlantic, Pacific, and Indian Oceans, right? He crossed all those oceans, you guys. He didn't return the same way he came. He returned from the other side. He crossed all those oceans. That's how he did it. It's history, man. It was 500 years ago. 500 freaking years ago, you guys. Okay? So I want to make sure I'm okay. I want to make sure I got these right. Okay. Anthony Abramora repeated Aristotle's calculation. This is pretty interesting. In 2012, Anthony Abramora repeated Aristotle's calculation, right? With more accurate data. Right. The result was 40,074 kilometers, which is 66 kilometers different, 0.16% from the currently accepted polar circumference of the Earth. So this was in 2012. This guy actually repeated the same experiment that Aristotle did, like 200 250, 300 years before Christ walked the planet. So the experiment held true today as well. Even in 2012, after we had the ISS, after we had been to space, after we had all this technology, he repeated that ancient experiment and proved it to still be super, super accurate and correct, right? That's significant to me because what that tells me is experiments they were doing 300 years before Christ walked the earth, like, were absolutely correct and proved that the earth was not flat, right? And they still hold up today. So it's interesting to me that there's an entire group of people that believe the earth is round. It's nuts. Anyways, I wanted to list this. This is a list of global circumnavigations throughout history, you guys. This is a list of people who have traveled the globe. They have started from one location and they've just set off east, or they've just set off north, or they just set off west, and they didn't stop until they got back to where they started, right? They just went in one direction and they didn't stop until they got back to where they started. And that would prove that the earth is in fact round, not flat, right? But I want to show you how many people have done this, because it wasn't just Magellan, okay? Magellan was just the first to do it. People have been doing this since the 16th century, okay? 16th century. Look at that. There's Elcano. There's Magellan, right? This is all the people who did it in the 16th century, right? 17th century. All the people who did it. And this is just all the listed people who did it. 18th century. Here's all the people who did it. You see the list grew a little bit. Look at the 19th century. Even more people did it. USS Constitution. SMS Navarra. All these people. There's Joshua Slocum. 1895 to 1898. Took him 3 years. The first single-handed circumnavigation. Single-handed circumnavigation. Right? What does that mean? Does that mean he did it all by himself? The sport and practice of single-handed sailing, or solo sailing, is sailing with only one crew member. Joshua Slocum was the first person to circumnavigate the entire planet by himself. Man, that must have been scary, right? I wonder what he would think about people saying that the earth is flat. I wonder what he would say about that. Here's the 20th century. Look at all the people who circled the entire globe. Look at that. That's crazy. And then we get into the 21st century, and the list is even bigger. You know, the 21st century isn't over yet. So look at this. Jessica Watson. She's still alive. You can probably find her on Facebook. She's the youngest person, age 16, to perform a solo, nonstop Southern Hemisphere circumnavigation past Cape Horn. This guy here was 77 years old, 2008 to 2011. Amazing. Reed Stowe, 2007 to 2010. Eastbound circumnavigation. 1,152 days. Longest time spent at sea without resupply or touching land. This dude circled the whole freaking globe. Some of these people you can reach out to now and talk to them. You know, it's like, and here's the funny thing. It's not just ships, right? It's fastest nautical circumnavigations of the globe. There's records, right? Operation Sandblast, 1960, USS Triton, first underwater circumnavigation, right? Fastest mechanical powered circumnavigation. Disputed with Earth Race, 2008, in 60 days, 21 hours. There's an Earth Race. I didn't even know that. Let's look at that real quick. What is Earth Race? Earth Race. My Addie Gill, former Earth Race, was a 70-foot wave-piercing trimaran, which was originally created as part of a project to break the world record for circumnavigating the globe in a power boat. Right? This boat was created to go around the world the fastest possible. Right? This boat was designed to be the fastest thing to go around the world, right? How is it possible if the world is flat? It doesn't make sense. It's nonsense. Don't believe it. Do not believe it. It's absolutely ridiculous. Aircraft circumnavigation. First aerial circumnavigation, 1924. It took 175 days. United States Army Air Service. And it just goes on and on, man. It goes on and freaking on. Spacecraft made the first human flight in space and completed the first orbit of the Earth and Vostok 1 in 108 minutes. The first complete orbit of Earth in 108 minutes. Yuri Gagarin made the first flight in space, human flight in space. Now, what's interesting to me is that, like, I know that the people who believe in flat Earth are going to say all these things I'm talking about are fake. All this is made up. But what I want you guys to understand is when you believe something so much that you believe it blindly with blind faith, like nobody can tell you anything. You're going to say that everything is a lie somehow. Your mind is going to convince you that it's all a lie. But I want you to listen to reason, right? I've just showed you evidence from over 2,000 years worth of evidence. It's spanning countries. It's spanning cultures. It's spanning history. Like, the greatest minds of all time have worked on this. And there's so much proof out there that this is the truth. There have been boats built to do one thing: go around the Earth as fast as possible, right? Human-powered motorized transportation is permitted over water or otherwise needed, but the human-powered distance must be a minimum of 18,000 miles to qualify for a world record, according to Guinness rules since 2013. Thomas Stevens was the first person to circle the globe by bicycle. The feat was accomplished between 1884 and 1886. While impressive at the time, a good portion of the trip was by steamer due to technical and political reasons. So interesting. Interesting. All these people have circumnavigated the globe. Heinz Stuck has been cycling around the world since 1962. So it's interesting. It's very, 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 very interesting. Anyways, let's move on. It's a whole lot of circumnavigational. The point is, there's a whole lot of circumnavigational history there that you're going to have to find a way to disregard if you want to believe the Earth is flat. Not to mention some of the greatest minds of all time. And then the last thing I want to point out, guys, in this little timeline is the history of geodesy. The history of geodesy. Let's just look at it really quick. This is basically also named geodetics, is the study of the scientific discipline that deals with the measurement and representation of the Earth. The history of geodesy began in pre-scientific and antiquity and blossomed during the Age of Enlightenment. The point is, it starts off, early ideas about the figure of the Earth held the Earth to be flat, and the heavens a physical dome spanning over it. Two early arguments for spherical Earth were that lunar eclipses were seen as circular shadows, which could only be caused by a spherical Earth, and that Polaris is seen lower in the sky as one travels south. You guys know this. We talked about it. Aristotle observed these two things. Okay. Hellenic world. It goes on and on. It goes on and on and on throughout the history. It goes on and on and on, and talking about how we came to discover the Earth is round and spherical and how big the Earth actually is. But the point is, there's a name to this study. There's a name to all this. It's called geodetics or geodesy, right? This is the study of the Earth, and it's the discipline that deals with the measurement and representation of the Earth. How big is it? What does it look like? That is the study of geodesy. How big is it? What does it look like? But this is a study that's been going on for a long, long time. This is a scientific discipline, you guys. It's a scientific discipline like chemistry, right? A scientific discipline like biology or ocean biology, right? It's a scientific discipline that deals with the measurement and representation of the earth, and it's been going on for a long time. That's what I'd say about that. So, come back to our timeline. If anybody's interested in a copy of this timeline, let me know. I will put a link to this timeline in the video for your reference. And let me go ahead and get off of this screen share. So yeah, that's what's up. That is what's up, right? Let me just check, see if there's anybody watching this live right now. If there's anybody watching live, I want to say, hey, what's up? I don't have a huge following, so. Up, right? Yeah, guys. So that's the whole thing about the Earth, right? That's the whole thing about the Earth. I just wanted to give you guys a little bit of history regarding the Earth, and I wanted you to understand that if anybody out there tells you that the Earth is flat, I want you to understand that they have to disregard 2,500 years of science. And I have watched a lot of flat Earth videos, and you know what? You know what? Let me tell you something. I haven't seen any videos that disprove all that science. Not a single bit. Not a single bit. So, anyways, and Dave, I do see you in chat there. I see you talking. I see you talking. First of all, I want you to understand something, Dave. This video is not for you. You are under that classification that I talked about. Someone who believes something so greatly that it is blind faith, my friend. You can't simply say that a scientific discipline that has been practiced for over thousands of years is just wrong. You can't say it's wrong. You can't do it. You got to go back and disprove all that science. So, anyways, guys, I didn't come here to argue with people who believe in flat Earth. I made this video as education for people who don't know what to believe. People who are on the fence, they're not sure what to make of all of it. Here's what I'm telling those people. If you want to listen to someone who believes the Earth is flat, make them disprove 2,500 years of science, right? Not just science by the United States, not just science by this country or that country, science that spans multiple cultures, multiple histories, science that spans before the time that Christ walked the planet, right? There's a lot they have to disprove to truly make that a relevant argument. The truth of the matter is, people who believe in flat Earth are laughed at, right? That makes them mad. But they're being laughed at for a reason, because what they're saying is nonsense. So, like I said, this video is not for the people who believe the Earth is flat. It's not for you guys. You guys continue believing what you want to believe. But I would strongly suggest you to go back and study the science and search your heart, you know, if it truly makes sense what you're saying. So anyways, that's all I got, guys. I don't got any more time to waste on it. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace, everybody.